Slalom, the art of flying around pylons in a specific sequence as fast as you can in a race against other competitors. The course is made up of 5 pylons set out in an 80-metre square in the same pattern as the number 5 on a die. You must cross a start and finish gate to collect your score. Full speed, high bank turns and close proximity to the water. Here's everything I had to do to be ready for the next step in my flying career. I've been wanting to try slalom for a couple of years now, so I've seen and watched the live streams, but it always helps to do a little bit more research into what you're getting yourself into. The barrier always seemed to be that you needed a completely different setup, using a big engine and a small wing, and somewhere to train, which also includes organising other people for safety boats, etc. However, just like how I started in my classic/endurance competing, there is now an entry-level class called the serial class, where you are limited to a maximum of 205 cc's and lower wing loadings compared to the main class. Essentially, you can compete on similar kit which you normally fly. Therefore, I'll be entering into the serial class using a Warp 218 and a Monster Classic. Now, although I can enter using more standard kit, there is some differences that do need to be taken into consideration. First and foremost, I'm part of the Viterazzi racing team and therefore I fly an EFI. Now, electricity and water don't work out so well, so I've opted to go for a Monster Classic just simply because if I end up in the water, I'm not damaging a brand new engine and specifically not an EFI engine either. So the other real change that I've made to my equipment is I've now fitted a smaller tank to my Bulldog frame. Normally it's got an 18 litre tank. I fitted a 7.5 litre tank just because it's recommended that if you're flying in slalom, you fly with either a full tank or a smaller tank. Essentially, if you've got any air in your tank, it will add to the buoyancy of the lower part of your paramotor and might flip you up if you do end up in the water. And also, you aren't even flying for that long, maximum probably like 10-15 minutes, and that's mostly holding. The course routes are like a minute maximum. I've just added a little bit more slack in my speed bar to give me a little bit more wiggle room when coming in and out of my turns, just in case I've got a little bit of brake on. I don't want that affecting and collapsing my glider, so just building in a little bit more tolerance there. And it's the same with my brakes as well. I've lengthened my brakes ever so slightly on my main brakes and moved them down a pulley because I'm on a high hang point machine. Having the brakes that a little bit closer to me, now that I'm not holding the actual handle, I'm holding the 2D line, it gives me a little bit more control with the tip steering, and then when I go to brakes, I've got a little bit more flex there just with the speed bar, so I'm not engaging both of those at the same time, causing myself any issues. Another essential piece of kit is a life jacket. Just got a standard life jacket. I'm hoping I'm not going to end up in the water at all, but you know, if I do end up in there more than once, at least that's got some reusability. I've also got myself like a running armband for your phone, but this time on my knee, so I can see the routes as I'm going around. But to be honest, once you've practiced the routes a couple of times, you shouldn't really need to look at this. It should be fixed in your memory. And then talking of practicing your routes, I've got a set of 5 cones just to set out when we have the route announced. Then I can set the 5 cones out and then walk the route before I go and fly it, so I can commit that to memory before going out there. In my testing, I found that everything happens very quickly and you can soon get lost if you don't know where you're going. So once I'd got all of my equipment sorted, it was down to training. Now, there's no one really in the UK that does slalom anymore, so I'm starting afresh essentially with little bits of information from some people that have either done it years and years ago or other teams abroad who have just given me a few little bits of tips. So to start my training, I started up high. I went up to the clouds and got used to holding my brakes in a different position than I'm used to. Normally I just hold the handles or I'm on tip steer, but now I've put my hands through the handles and I'm holding on to the 2D line that's on the Warp 2. So essentially my brake looks like the Snake 4 brake handles, which have obviously set up for slalom. Essentially what I want to do is engage my tips first as I'm on my speed bar going into a turn, and then as I'm at the pylon or just past it, I'm finding then releasing that speed bar, then going straight into main brakes. So having them like that. Then comes with, like I was saying, speed bar into the turns. You know, you're heading towards a point as fast as you possibly can. You're then, to get yourself started for that turn, you're then pulling tips in, and then as you're past the pylon, then releasing your bar and going to full brakes and screaming around that as fast as you possibly can. So essentially what I was doing up high above the clouds, I would use speed bar, start my bank, and then go into full brakes, and then have a bit of a gap, you know, full speed bar into brake. And it wouldn't be as tight as the 80-meter course that you get set during the slalom, but it was just to get used to the physical movements and timings of going into those turns, and also coming out of those turns as well, because as you come out of your turn, you're going to have a lot of energy, and if you've still got your full power on, which you likely will from cranking round the corner, you're going to balloon up. And I found that out when I did some more testing later on. But to get away from that, you then need to come off of your brakes, still have the tip engaged into the direction you're going, and then get back on speed bar. Alternatively, you could get off of power, and I've got more power than I really need to fly the 18 meter around this course, so it's going to take a bit of finessing, whereas the top guys will have big power, tiny wings, so it's like in tune with pretty much just being full power all the time. And then practicing turns into other turns. Until you've actually flown an 80 meter square course, you don't realize how close it is, and it is significantly close. So practicing swinging in turns into other turns, almost like figure eights nearly, is another good thing to practice up high. So once I was kind of happy with a lot of that, I then took to being a little bit lower down. So I was using hedges to gauge where the turn radius was of my turns. So that would be without speed bar, I'd fly past a hedge that's around nothing else, and then crank in like a 180 degree turn around this hedge. And I was finding that actually you really need to be pretty much past it before you start this turn, because your turn radius is pretty small, and obviously if you've got a wing above your head, you've got another 5-6 meters above you, and that can quite quickly become very close to the target you're turning around. So you almost need to come a bit wider and a bit further than you really think you need to be. And that's quite a bit of an eye-opener, which really played into when I practiced the actual laid out course. And so the next thing I then did was like visualization of the courses. So you'll see a lot of guys at the slaloms where they're practicing around their set out 5 cones. So they set out 5 cones, they have the route that they've been told in front of them, and they'll just go and physically go through the motions of flying the course without actually being strapped into a paramotor and doing it. So they'll just walk the course over and over again until it's like embedded in their memory, because some of these tracks can get quite complex and interesting. Some are fairly simple, but the bigger ones are quite tricky to remember. But I suppose the more you do it, the easier it becomes, and that's essentially why you would do the visualization on the courses. And then to top off all of this, I then took to some airfield practice, and I will preface this with doing anything with speed bar low down to the ground is not a good idea, and can be very dangerous, and has led to a lot of accidents in the community over the years. So I'm not advising that you go out and practice slalom over the ground. This is exactly why it moved to solely being over water. But I was practicing around the airfield, so a bit of speed bar, straight line, and then most of my turns were just using brakes. I touched the speed bar a little bit just to sort of practice, but not pushing it in any sense of the matter, because any mistake down low and you're going to be in the ground. Like, you've got no time to respond to that. So I did fly the course to get a feel of how big it was. 80 meter square is pretty small. Like, you don't realize how small that is, and it fits, if any of you are local to England, it fits within Wingland's airfield. So I can see why, you know, these collapses and stuff happen during slalom, because it's so fast paced, everything's so close together. And I believe it was Johnson Q who said that the slalom is won in the turns now, it's not in the straights anymore, because it used to be 100 meters square, and yeah, I can see why, because it's so tight. So that sort of concluded the stuff that I did for my training. And so if anyone's looking to get into slalom and is a bit worried about it and didn't know where to start or what to look for, I'm quite happy to talk through anything that I've done. The community's great. But here are some top tips from what I've just kind of gone out and done on my own back to try and make myself ready for the Slalom World Championships. I started off by watching as many slalom videos as I possibly could find to see what was going right and what was going wrong, and trying to analyse what they were doing in terms of their movements and try and avoid any of the accidents that were happening. And then from that, the next tip would be start up high. Get used to the synchronization of speed bar, tip steer, and then full brake turns. And then coming out of those turns as well, back on speed bar. But do it up high. That's the key. And following that, be sensible. The use of speed bar close to the ground has and will increase the risk of accidents. This is the main reason slalom is exclusively over water now. Don't do anything silly over land. Take the time to get somewhere to practice properly. And then, as any other general competition advice would go, don't expect to be the best on your first competition. Everyone started from the bottom, but through consistency and getting better each time, they've got to the position where they're competing for gold. Go to a competition to learn about your own flying. The winning comes later.
How's that, Em?
That course is so small. I'm like, woo, woo, like this, all over the place. Oh man, that is going to take some getting used to.
Feeling dizzy, or are you good?
Like, some of them felt like pretty alright, and then the other ones I was like, oh, that's not good. Tips, I think, but there you go.
Nice, good job, Em.
Yeah, thank you. Follow the 7th World Paramotor Slalom Championships live here on YouTube, streamed every single day for all the flights.
All good?
Alright. First attempt at slalom, eh?
Done your pre-flight?
Say again?
You done your pre-flight?
Yeah.
You're good to go?
Hope so. Right. Oh no, for fuck's sake.
What's wrong? You about to start?
Yeah.
What are you going to shout?